Um, it's almost showtime for the Boston Pen Show. And am I ready? Absolutely not. I'm going to bring 3 or 4, 5 dozen pens with me, various kinds. Some of them I'm aiming toward the calligrapher. Some will be aimed toward the draftsman or the sketcher. Some will be geared toward the journal writer. Probably none will be geared toward the collector. So if you're a serious collector, and I use the word serious, let's say you're a collector that loves Esterbrook pens and you want one of every single size and every single color, every model they ever made, I would call that a serious collector. You're not frivolous. You have a collection in mind and you're going to make that collection complete. And I might have that very Esterbrook pen in a pile and you'll want to buy it from me. Chances are I don't have that pen. I have the common ones that you already have 5 of. There are, I do have in my collection of pens, I have pens that many serious, quote, serious pen collectors would want. But 99 out of 100 pens that I sell are for the people that actually use the pens. And those people I consider to be just as serious about the pens, in fact, perhaps even more serious about the pens they have than a collector would be. Because in addition to, or differently than a collector, the person who's using the pen has in mind what the perfect pen for them might be. And it may never be the perfect pen. It might be just a pen that will work 98% of their imagined ideal. Perhaps the ideal pen doesn't even exist. Pens are like anything in life. Pens are, they may approach an ideal, but they'll never get there entirely. Like a pair of shoes. One pair will work perfectly well most of the time. But then when you want to climb that mountain, those penny loafers are not going to be very good. And if you want to tap dance, those hiking boots aren't going to work very well either. So you have to end up having 2 or 3 pair of shoes or 2 or 3 pens or whatever it is that you want to fulfill 99% of what you want your pen or your shoes to do. So anyway, I'm there to help those people find the one pen that maybe gets them closer to coming up with a wardrobe of pens so that they've got a pen for every occasion that they can think of. I know that it's very easy for me anyway to sell a flexible nibbed pen. It's a little harder for me to sell a fine nibbed pen, but I'm going to bring some fine nibbed pens anyway for those people that are willing to switch to something a little bit different. And there are a lot of people out there that love really, really fine pointed pens, and they pay lots of money to take a modern pen and grind the nib down to a needle point. Before you do that to your $800 Mont Blanc Meisterstück, come over to my table and try out a Sheaffer Feather Touch, because that pen might be perfect and it may cost less than a nib meister might charge for fine-tuning an existing nib. Now, I don't mean to say anything bad about nib meisters, because they're very skilled at what they do, and I don't admonish them for taking a modern pen nib and lathing it and turning it and grinding it or magically changing it to something that you want. That's great. I'm glad they're there. I'm glad they're able to help you out. Whenever you do anything to a pen nib, grinding it or polishing it or tweaking it or doing something, you can't put it back. You can't make it fat once it's been fine. You can't add iridium magic. There's no undo button at the nib grinding table. And I'd rather have you first try out, there might be, let's say there's someone in line next to you, right in front of you or behind you. Let's say you have the same Mont Blanc Meisterstück. The one person in front of you has a fine nib, wants a broad nib, wants to change it so it's not as fine, and you have a broad nib, medium nib, and you want it to be finer. You might just trade the pens, and you'll both be happy, and the pens won't be altered in any way. And again, here I don't mean to be taking the business away from my fellows who fix and shape modern shape pen nibs. I'm very happy that they're doing it, but once you take a nib and alter it and remove stuff, you're always removing something. You're never adding anything. You're removing material. You can't put that material back. So just be careful before you have this nib changed. Think about it for a minute or two or three. Presently, I'm thinking that almost every pen at my table will be less than $100. I might have some that are 150. I might have some that are 125. Some might be 100. I think most of the pens I have will be less than that. Not a lot less, especially if they're flexible nibs. They're hard to get these days. Everyone wants them, and they are one of the sexiest things on the planet. A flexible nib on a fountain pen. Of course you want one, but and a lot of people will have them there at the show. Will mine be cheaper? They might be. They might be more expensive. The same pen, if these two pens, I'll pick two let's pretend here's a Waterman with a flexible nib at my table, here's a Waterman with a flexible nib at that person's table. I value flexible nibs more than maybe this person does. So I might add another $10 or $20 to a pen because I love the way it writes and I don't want to say goodbye to it yet. But this flexible nib on that other person's table, the same nib, this might be on a sterling silver overlay pen that's going to be $400, Whereas on a plain, that same nib on this pen, plain black hard rubber pen might be $100. Same nib, it'll write the same, it'll do everything the same, except here you're spending a lot of money on the looks of the pen, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But I tend to sell the user pens for the people that actually use them, and most of the time the artists and the calligraphers that I know are very happy to pay less money for a pen than paying a lot of money for it. And if it's missing its clip, once upon a time it had a clip, once upon a time this pen had a clip, it's not there now, they don't care. They're not buying the pen to put in their pocket. They're buying the pen to do a drawing. They're buying a pen to do calligraphy. It may never leave their desk. They don't ever put it in their pocket. So, whereas this pen at someone else's table, they might not even bring it because they don't want to sell a pen that's missing a clip. So, there's that. And I can imagine them saying at their very fancy table, why does Pierre bring junk in quotes? Why does he bring pens that are missing parts? Why does he do that? Well, I do it because I can sell the pen cheaper. And I like to do that if I can. So we have Roger and Atomic Elf. I've been in the wrong path, sending some nibs to Nibmeisters. So there are some nib people that do better work than others. Without naming names, without you naming names, what happened to the nib? Why did the nib? How did the nib change? And why is it sitting in a drawer? The person said, I know what you're talking about. I've been wrong in the past sending some nibs to the Nibmeister. Usually those nibs sleep in the drawer, meaning that person doesn't use the pens because somehow the nib it might be perfectly fine, but it turns out it's not what they really thought it was going to be like, or it was tuned in such a way that it's scratchier now than it was before. There are some people who might ask for an italic nib rather than a stub nib. They'll want a stub nib made into, quote, an italic nib. And an italic nib, italic is a way of writing. It's not how to describe a nib, but to do writing with the italic lettering, Old English or something, you want the side stroke to be as fine as possible, and you want it to be sharp. So that little edge here's the gold nib. You want okay, can I just do this at all correctly? Let's pretend this is a nib. The point of the nib is broad going down, but it's fine going across, and that edge is 90 degrees. If it's rounded at all, it's going to the line that the shape of the letter it makes is going to be sloppy. But this is going to be really, really scratchy if you don't hold it exactly right up and down. Whereas a stub nib, they're slightly rounded on the ends. It could be slightly fatter, and it's smoother. So make sure you understand what you're asking for. If you say I want an italic nib and it comes back scratchy, well, that's your fault for asking for something that that's gonna, and the other thing is if you want a pen that's really, really, really fine, that's gonna feel scratchier as well because there's only 2 molecules of iridium touching that paper, 2 atoms of iridium touching that paper, and it's gonna be really, really, really scratchy. It'll be scratchier than it was when it was just fine. Anyway, just be careful before you ask the nib person to change a nib for you, because they may go a little further than you want. And you know, if you're able to stand there and the Nibmeister, you know, tweaks it and then lets you try it, tweaks it, lets you try it, tweaks it, lets you try it, and then you get to the sweet spot, that's great. But oftentimes, you know, that takes all day long, and these people may not have that time on their hands to spend it with you. Anyway, let's see what this person said. The best pen, he only has 7 pens. The best pen is an Aurora 68, and this pen has never reached a Nibmeister. Well, that's good. I was once at a pen show where someone had a beautiful display of beautiful vintage fountain pens, and he said he smoothed, all the nibs are smoothed. And when he said that, my heart sank. And I had asked him, do you have any accountant nibs? Accountant nibs were made by Waterman and Parker and Schaefer, other people, and some of them are labeled accountant or account, and they're extremely fine. And again, it's one of these nibs that has only 2 atoms of iridium on the end. It's very, very tiny. And if you take anything off, your chances are you're not going to make it finer, you're going to make it scratchier, or you're going to make it sharper. It's already fine, and it's already maybe a little bit scratchy just because of the fineness, but to smooth out an almost invisible tip of iridium so it's rounded, which you want it to be on most pens. You want the sphere to be a ball or an ovoid of some sort, unless you're getting a stub nib, in which case you want it fine on this side, not invisible, but fine and sharp. You may take off more than you want, so just be careful. So what sort of, Roger, what sort of pens, what nib were you asking for on the pens that you did send to a Nibmeister? Were you asking for something particularly obscure, or what were you asking for that was not achieved? At the pen show this weekend, okay, a modern Aurora. I don't know the European brands, and I don't really know modern pens that are, well, I don't know which pens are actually made in the United States anymore, but I don't know modern Parkers. I don't know modern Watermans. I know that modern pen nibs from the factory come in maybe 5 different styles, you know, and the finest or the extra fine is a lot broader than what the fine used to be when they were manufactured. So I think the nibs of any modern pen are going to be a little bit fatter, blobbier than they used to be. Someday I'm going to have to get the little shrinkometer out and have me turn, be reduced to a centimeter tall or a millimeter tall, and actually look at the nibs, what the shape of the ball is on the end of the tip, to just see how they are different. My guess is almost any modern fountain pen is manufactured to be smooth, and part of that smoothness is what is referred to these days as a baby bottom, where the slit between the two halves of the iridium is slightly rounded at the tip. And what happens, it's smoother, but it also skips. The ink doesn't make contact with the paper. Most fountain pen nibs are two halves of a billiard ball. And that little edge of the inside half is, by its nature, sharp. And if you smooth it out along that hemisphere, you're going to get what's referred to as the baby's bottom thing. So here's the tip of the nib. A vintage pen would have something that looks like that. So right here, that is this shape. But if you smooth that and you smooth the other one, there's a point at which the ink cannot get from here onto the paper. So it'll skip. Yes, there's probably some, I don't know what the capillary action of ink is to paper, but there is a point at which it will skip. And the sharper, the closer these two ends are, the better it will work. But also the scratchier it may appear. And you sense the scratchiness, not on the downstroke, but on the side stroke. You feel it on the side stroke more. So anyway. And Atomic says it also depends on the paper, the smoothness, the fiber contact of the paper. Yes, all of that does also add into the mix. There's a lot of factors that go into how a pen writes and how smooth the pen seems to be. There's no sort of one answer for every possible pen. Some pens might work really, really good on these three different kinds of paper, and they suck everywhere else. Same thing with inks. They're all individual creatures. So that's one of the reasons why I ask people that visit my table, bring me the pen that you like the most. Bring me the paper you use the most. You can tell me what ink you use the most. I might say, that's a really thick ink. I can see why it's skipping or something. Ink is the thing I know the least about. And I know there's so many different inks out there that even if I wanted to learn about them, I'd be dead before I was finished. But I think I'm pretty good, after doing this for 40 years, I'm pretty good at looking at how you hold the pen, looking at the kind of writing you do, looking at the kinds of drawings you make, to be able to say, I think this is the kind of pen you like. I might hand you two pens and I'll say, I think you're going to like this one better than this one, based on what I see you do. And you might try them both and you'll say, yeah, you're right. And I'll say, yes, I know. I don't want to sound like a know-it-all or I'm bragging, but I've been doing this for a long time, and I can kind of tell, I think, what you like based on how you hold the pen, how you draw, what the result is of putting pen on paper. I think I'm pretty good at discovering that. If I see a page of writing and I see that it's pretty firmly written and there's not a lot of variation between the light and dark, the pressured versus unpressured, I'll probably guess, and I might be wrong, I'll probably guess that you press down more than you need to make a line. You're heavy-handed, and I can see that, and I'll say, well, I could sell you a pen that's really, really flexible, but you're not going to make use of the fine nib that it has because you're already pressing down too hard. So I'll give you this pen. This pen I think you'll like better. The fine nib, the fine flex nib I'll save for someone who shows me, that there's a difference between the thick and the thin. It's like selling a Maserati Formula One sports car to someone who just goes to the grocery store, never gets on the highway, drives on suburban streets. I'm not going to sell them a Ferrari because even if they want one, I'll say, I'd rather sell you this station wagon. It'll work better for you. I don't have a passport, so I'm not going to get to the Barcelona Pen Show anytime soon. I don't even know, leaving the country, leaving this United States of America and trying to get back in, even though I'm a US citizen, they might not want me back, depending on what they read about what I say about the president of the United States. Yep, we'll just divert that passenger to El Salvador. Not that I've said anything threatening. I just point out the truth. Documented truth. Windmills do not cause cancer, for example. Just saying. When I write, I notice variation in line thickness when using arm movements versus the movement of the wrist. Some of the early penmanship most of the early penmanship um, schools of thought called some element of their product or their teaching whole arm movement. You don't make the letters like this. You move, your fingers are more or less the same, but you move your arm, not just your fingers. So, and you can get thick and thinness the same way you do if you use your finger, by pressing down more on the downstroke than the upstroke. What happens when you move your whole arm rather than your fingers, you might get smoother lines. You might get, it's hard, for example, it's very easy. I'll start this way. If I'm trying to, make a curve by just using my fingers, there's a lot of bumps and variation, but if you hold the pen and you move your arm, there's smoothness there that you don't get when you're just moving your fingers. Yes, you can practice and you can get better, but this is a little exercise for everyone. Find a nice big blank sheet of paper and make the slinky, make it like this with just your fingers. Eventually you'll find out that you're going to have to move your hand, pick up the pen and move your hand. Otherwise the slinky is going to fall over because you can't do it anymore. Or if you keep your fingers the same and you move your arm, your letters are not going to fall over the same way as these did, because you're moving from your shoulder and your elbow, actually your shoulder more than your elbow even. And if you practice enough, you're going to get really, really good at it. And then you use your index finger to press down on the downstroke, and then up and down and up, down and up. So and birds aren't real, so who cares if the windmills kill them? Is that something he said? Birds aren't real. So anyway, it's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I've got 2 days, 3 days if you count today, which is half over, for me to get my pens in order to go to the pen show. And today I might as well just cross off the list. Shall I show you what I was doing the last 2 days for the pen show? Here's a hint for pen show people, for those of you that go to a pen show. A pen show is, pens are tiny, they're sitting on a table. Anything that you can do to lift up the table, raise the table so the pen is closer to someone standing is good. There are now, I don't know, maybe 10% of pen show dealers actually raise their tables up. It used to just be Susan Worth and me. Susan would raise the actual table with leg extenders, whereas I would have some of my table at table height with chairs, and then I would build at a raised area. I have 2 tables at the pen show, and I'm drawing them in perspective. Here's the 2 tables. Here's a cat. I'm not bringing my cat, but here's a cat rubbing its back up against the table leg, just for you to, and I'm standing behind here, my V-shaped torso, my 6-pack abs. I promise you I'm not going to be showing you my 6-pack, or my more modern version of torsoage, my beer gut. But here I am, you're standing. I'll have the center part is going to be raised up. So you and I, both standing, will have a pen and paper where you can see it closely. You're standing, you're holding it correctly. I'm watching you. And then I'm going to have an area that's a little bit shorter over here for people that might be a little shorter. This might be a foot off the table. This might be 10 inches off the table. So there'll be 2 different heights. Then there'll be an area over here where people can sit and try out pens. I'll have a big light here, which I'm going to show you in a minute. And I've been spending 2 days building this thing. And I'm going to have some artwork that I did using pens over here that you can buy or not, depending on whether I have time to drag them out. That's my plan anyway, to have different height to the table. Almost everyone else will have a low table where you have to bend over to try out a pen, which is very uncomfortable to do and very unnatural to do. So it's not a very good test. But the thing that I'm doing here, I'm having this big beacon, I'll call it a big beacon that's raised up above my table, and it'll allow people to find me easily. And that sort of thing at a pen show, having some sort of display, some sort of thing at the eye level of someone standing, is a good idea. There was one of the first pen shows in Boston. One of the things that really was really nice at one table was this: the dealer brought a little box, and on top of the box, on top of the table, there was a box maybe 10 inches square, and on top of that she put a potted plant that had flowers on it. And that just made me smile. Someone decorated their table with some flowers. And she said, we do that at all antique shows we go to, and it really works. People recognize it. They come over. It seems friendly. And try that if you're a dealer at a pen show. Bring a vase of flowers and see if that brings customers to you. Okay. Trying to carefully draw it, but really fast circle. The fast circle really, really works well. Hello, Ms. Marilyn. So let me show you this thing that I'm building. I have to turn it on here. Hold on, I'll be right back. The pen show is this weekend, Marilyn. So this is what you're going to see. And the hand at the top will have a card in it saying, "Hello, sailor. or flexible nibs, or welcome to the pen show or something will be in the hand on the top. So my eye level is right here. So this is 6 feet off the ground, and the hand is maybe 8 feet off the ground. And we're in a armory building, which is a little dark, and the tablecloths we have at the pen show are black. So it's going to, this will seem, I think, kind of magical. These are diplomas for Palmer method calligraphy, certificate of calligraphy, and business writing. So this gob, people will find me. And I can also do this, which is so cool. I can, with my magic, I can change the color of the top light bulb to be different. So that'll, and then my hat I'll be wearing, I'll have a hat that matches my display. I made this hat for trivia night. I cut all sorts of diplomas apart, antique diplomas, to create this hat. So I have the knowledge of an 8th grader from Hudson, New York, and the chiropractic school of chiropody, whatever it is. And I also have the knowledge of the Masons, the Supreme Council of the ancient and accepted, whatever it is. So all of this, and I put this on my head, and it's pretty darn cool. Now, when you see me wearing that hat next to this thing I just showed you, you might just move to the other side of the aisle and inch your way around my table because I'm frightening. That's okay. If you're scared of my funny hat, that's fine. But I think most people think it's going to be fun. You'll call them in the white coat. Yeah. I mean, Ms. Marilyn, you've known me for many, many years, and you know that I'm trying to have fun, and I try to convey lightheartedness to this hobby, which is pretty lighthearted to begin with. You know, we're not, we aren't a bunch of Wall Street bankers or investors talking serious stuff about billions of dollars. We're talking about fun little pens. And I think let's talk about fun pens and let's keep it fun. Let's not imitate our Wall Street bankers because we don't have to. Now, for those of you who are Wall Street bankers, lighten up. No, I'm sure you're fun too, and many of you might collect fountain pens and use fountain pens, and that's all great. But I try to have fun. I try to point out how creative you can be with fountain pens, either by calligraphy or drawing or other things, rather than just looking at them and buying every last example of a Waterman 404 pen. Yeah. Um, well, the Boston show is among the smaller ones that is happening. So to actually come to the Boston show, uh, I wouldn't recommend it. I shouldn't say that out loud. I'm looking for, it's just your selection will be lesser. You'll have less of a selection of pens. Um, but the dealers are really geared toward the users, not just the collectors, but to the pen users, and that's through through my focus when I ran the first Boston Pen Show 40 years ago. I was always aiming it toward the user, not the collector. So I would have students and artists and calligraphers come to the show, and dealers loved it because they would buy a pen that had teeth marks on it. They didn't care. The collectors ignored those pens, but and they were very happy selling pens that they couldn't give away to a collector, but they're very happy to take money from someone who wants to use it. So we were on the forefront of the pen shows that were geared toward the user. For years, I would go to the Philadelphia Pen Show and I'd have to bring my own ink because no one had any ink. No one knew that people actually, well, I'm not saying no one, many people, many dealers didn't realize that people actually used the pens, bought them to use. And I think now, mainly because of the modern pen uh, manufacturers and journal people and the ink people, I mean, people don't buy ink just to keep it in the bottle. They buy it to use. They open that bottle. They can't wait to try it out in a pen and put it on paper. Um, so I think I'm very happy that the modern pen manufacturer is emphasizing the joy of writing with a pen. They're talking to my kind of people. I just wish that the modern pen companies had greater variety of pen nibs out there. Modern pens are um, um, collectible pens. Modern pens are collectible. People are buying a modern pen because it's a limited edition or whatever. They want to get one of every color of a Lamy Safari. Um, they are collecting pens, whether they know it or not. They are collecting pens, and um, a collector's pen, a pen that you normally think of as, that I normally think of as a pen collector, are those that collect vintage pens that aren't made anymore. Um, and those pens, you can buy a Waterman made in 1920 for a lot less than you can buy a modern Mont Blanc or Schaefer or Parker or Waterman. And you can use both, and you might really, really be surprised at how different the older one is if you've never tried an older pen. And again, collector's pens, this is what's so hard to, there's so many different ways to collect. And I know and you know what it means, what it means when we say collector, a pen that a collector would want. But if you actually then try to define that, you're going to find a million different exceptions to the rule or variations on a rule. Someone that collects only Estabrooks has a similar quest as someone that collects Waterman 404s. It's going to be hard to complete the set, to really complete it, because there's so many variations of, well, both 404s and Estabrooks. In a way, a 404, there might be more 404s in existence today than Estabrooks per capita, per unit made, because Estabrick pens were cheap, and if they broke, you'd throw them away and buy a new one. Where a Waterman 404 cost a lot of money when they were made, and chances are only really, really wealthy people bought them, and chances are they didn't throw them away. They had them repaired, or grandma died, and these things were, maybe they were thrown away by the grandkids or melted down or who knows what. But I have a feeling that there might be, and maybe it's equal. Who knows what I'm talking about. You collect Waterman 12s with Boinga Boinga nibs. You sure do. How many do you have now, Marilyn? Ms. Marilyn, I sold you the first. I've sold you the second. You have 3 now. Okay, I sold you the second. This is my upper jaw. I think that tooth has been subsequently capped, and I think this tooth has subsequently been yanked out of my head. This was made by the students at the Tufts New England Medical Dental School, where I go, and I get my teeth repaired there, and I've gone through, I don't know, 5 different students by now. Each one makes a cast of my jaw, and one of them gave me that one. I think they had to, there was something wrong with this one. Part of it didn't work, so they had to do another one, so they gave me this one. Anyway, I should probably have some lunch and get my act together here. I look forward to showing you the 3 pens I buy at the pen show next week. I'll buy them this weekend, but next weekend I'll show you the ones I buy. I'm not planning to buy anything. I don't have the money to buy anything, but if I sell a few pens, I may say, okay, I can buy one. I'm always looking for things with nice nibs. I occasionally look for a pen that I like the look of. I have a bunch of off-brand pens that no one really likes except for me. And I also look for pens that were like this one. This is a pen that was made by a third tier pen pencil combo that was made by a third tier company, but I really like the black and white marble patterns. I have a collection of these, and most of them are third tier companies. And this one I will eventually put a Victorian dip pen nib into. So I'm looking for those, and no one else wants those things. So I may find one. Noodler's Conrad Hudson Bay Blue. That's a pen that you want me to buy for you, or an ink. I don't know if Nathan is coming to the show. I talked to him on the phone a couple of weeks ago, and he's very nervous about driving. And I told him, take a Lyft, pay for a guy to drive you there, or take the train to as close as you can get and get a Lyft. I know that people love him. I also said, don't bring, even though he'd sell probably every bottle of ink he would bring, he doesn't have to, he could take just a suitcase full of ink rather than an entire car full of ink. And I know that, he has so many fans out there, and I'm one of them. Probably his oldest fan. I've known him since the time he was in high school, junior high probably, and our history goes way back, and I really do like him, but he hasn't been to the pen show in a while. It's a pen. Write it down exactly. Well, I did tell him, I said that there might be someone that will be willing to drive you. I don't know. He's an interesting character, and I think pushing and shoving him is not going to go well. Making things easier for him. There was a person that used to sell pens for him, and they offered to drive him up last year, and he didn't even do that. So again, he's an odd duck in that way. I will give him a squeeze of some sort to him. I think he'd appreciate that. Have you emailed him lately, Ms. Marilyn? If you don't have his email, I could send it to you. Or why don't you send me something and I'll forward it to him? I don't. He's a very private person these days, so it's weird. Send me something and I'll forward it to him, and if he feels like he wants to get back to you, he will. I don't know. Anyway, on that note, I better get my act together here, so we'll see you later. There's my beautiful lamp from afar. Talk to you all later. Bye.